All right. Welcome to the Ultra High Net Worth Clients Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Broadhead. Today, we have a very special guest, Nick Halaris. Nick, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I mean, I don't know where to begin. What you want to just like a quick summary about what I'm doing?
Yeah, tell us.
Okay. So currently I'm kind of engaged in three things. I have my core business, which is called Metros Capital, which started off as sort of a investment and development firm here in Los Angeles like a decade ago, and has now turned into like a fully vertically integrated real estate company. So we're investing, we're developing properties, we're property managing our properties and other people's properties. And then recently, as kind of a reaction to the fires that devastated this community, we've been providing consulting services for other homeowners who've been impacted, either who need sort of help with their renovations, if they had just minor damage, or people who lost their homes. We're helping them kind of figure out how to get their plans in the works and in front of the city and through that. So we now have an even like a development consulting business, which has been kind of rewarding. I never thought I would be doing real estate in this sort of client facing way, but there's a huge need, and it's a very difficult process in this town. So it's nice to be able to help people in that way. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then I also have a newsletter called Profit Plus, which has over 20,000 subscribers now, which I started during the COVID era, and is a weekly newsletter about sort of all things related to trying to build wealth, but to do so without compromising your integrity. And so
Mm.
it's been a fun project, and there's spun off a podcast that's related to it called the Nick Halaris Show. Not a great, not a real original name. Uh, they there's so many podcasts, it's hard to actually get a name that somebody else isn't using. So I just went with that. But the premise of that show is to explore a lot of the same ground as in Profit Plus, but kind of talk to inspiring people who are trying to use business as a force for good, or
Mhm.
use art as a force for good, or politics
Yeah,
even.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's awesome, man.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
doing now.
I love that. That's a great premise. And it's a brilliant title. Come on.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I lived in Los Angeles for 4 years. My wife's from Los Angeles. My in-laws still live there. We had, we had first degree connection friends, houses burned down. So we have direct exposure to everything that happened there. My in-laws' house was like 3 blocks from a major fire. We were very, very worried about them.
Yeah.
What's the latest? What's going on? What's good? What's bad? What direction are we going in
Yeah.
with that?
That's a good question. We could literally use our entire time talking about that. Yeah.
I'm just curious. Yeah.
Yeah, let me try to summarize it. Like, there's been a lot of sort of well-intentioned action by both the government and the private sector and nonprofits and whatnot. But the truth is that things are moving incredibly slow,
Hmm.
and homeowners are frustrated.
That's so unlike California.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it takes like just we're doing several renovation projects in Palisades, and just getting over there takes like 2 hours
Oh my
because
gosh.
you need a permit. You have to go to this random office on Westwood and Pico and get a permit to drive there, and most of the roads are still closed, and so logistically it's not really going well.
Hmm.
There's all kinds of talk about streamlining and whatnot, but from what we can tell, it's not really in place yet. Um, I think it's still kind of early. Like, I'm willing to give the city a chance to live up to their word on this, but at this moment, nothing really is being streamlined. Like, they're
Hmm.
just getting to the cleanup, and so long story short, it's a mess. And there's a lot of people who are living, in unideal circumstances, don't know what to do next, and it's going to be a long process to rebuild.
Oh man, that's brutal. For some reason, I had the thought of like, just getting a drone to like fly there and like meet with whoever you need to meet with.
Yeah, I know. That's what you kind of need to do. Like, at this point, if you don't want to waste your half a day driving to a,
Yeah,
yeah,
dude.
it's a real problem. Yeah,
It's like
PCH.
we'll FaceTime and then I'll fly a drone around. It'll be fine.
I know maybe this will accelerate like the use of technology in our industry, which has been, slow to take on for sure.
Yeah, yeah. One of my clients, they're the largest commercial paving company in the world, and they transitioned to drones maybe like 7 years ago to assess like pavement, and it like changed the game.
Yeah.
Instead of flying people out, they can just, assess it with drones, and it's like 1,000 times faster and just better.
Yeah.
So, but I
Yeah, that's a
digress.
good use. No, that's a good use
Yeah.
case for that because all you got to do is kind of like fly it above the asphalt, get some good photos, and you know what needs to be repaired. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, well that's a bummer about that situation. But yeah, hopefully California kind of streamlines some stuff and makes it easier. So as far as real estate investing, is that predominantly in California, or what areas do you guys focus on?
Yeah, at these days it's mostly in California. I have two kids in elementary school, and so
Mm,
I've been deliberately focused on kind of staying nearby. I've
hmm
invested extensively in other markets like the Carolinas and Atlanta, but that was like 15 years ago, earlier in my career. And I still
hmm
own, my partner and I at Metros Capital, we still own actually a bunch of stuff in Atlanta and a little bit in Nashville. And so we have ties to that region. But the focus for 8 or 9 years has been this area, West Hollywood, Hancock Park, and a little bit of
hmm
city. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems to me that there's, I mean, this doesn't seem to me, this is obvious to anyone, but there's just a significant shortage of housing just options. There's not enough housing in this area.
Yeah.
And I mean, just as before the fire, and apparently after, the state is not sort of doing anything to help with that. They're not getting out of the way. It seems like they're in the way, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too political or political at all. But like what, there's a lot of people that want to live there. Rent is insane, and now it's going to be even more insane because how many structures burned down? Like 100,000,
No, I think it was more like 15,000, but still,
15,000. Okay.
it's a significant number. And just to put it in context, like the best year of new home development in Los Angeles City in the last decade was like 18,000. So we basically lost like the best year in
Oh
in
my gosh.
in an instant. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it is a problem. This town is like many towns in America, like LA is not the only place where there's an affordability problem, but this is like the poster
Mhm.
child. And the numbers are staggering. There's something like 600,000 families in this region who are spending something like 80% of their income on housing. And so you want to talk about being vulnerable to things like, a
Jeez.
health issue or a job loss or whatever, try paying 80% of your income on rent. And so there's a lot of people vulnerable, which produces all kinds of really bad downstream impacts for the city, like homelessness, for example. It's
hmm
not the only cause of homelessness, but housing, absolutely, expensive housing is a contributing factor to the homelessness crisis. And yeah,
hmm
this is decades in the making. It goes all the way back to like the 60s when they were, doing these racial red lines to keep certain
hmm
people out of certain neighborhoods. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And then the environmental movement came in and got the environmental movement started with a good sort of premise, but it got co-opted by the NIMBYs. So the NIMBYs introduced all the
hmm
environmental legislation to prevent development, and it's just like this vicious cycle for the city.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. I won't be sad when they're gone.
Yeah, yeah. The I feel like the story of our lifetime actually, in America at least, and this is probably true in other places, is the world is sort of skewing along the lines of like whether you own a home or not.
hmm
And if you're fortunate enough to inherit a home or make enough money to buy a home, then the economic picture, your balance sheet picture just gets better and better and better. And then the people who
Mhm.
don't, it gets worse and worse and worse. And
Yeah.
this is manifesting in politics. It's kind of everywhere. And it's something we have to fix. Like I'm firmly convinced that the housing is sort of the main, probably the main battleground in the country that no one wants to talk about. Like the national
Hmm.
politics is not really talking about housing, but a lot of the things they're fighting about is at the core related to the fact that people feel housing insecure.
Hmm. Yeah, my father grew up in Sarasota, and then in the late 70s, early 80s, him and my mom lived in San Luis Obispo, and they were flipping houses. And, in my high school, college mind, I'm like, oh, what these houses cost? Like a couple hundred grand. And he's like $30,000. And I would sell them for 50 because I put new carpet in. And I was
Yeah.
like, what an insane like that's just the prospect of that, like add a zero at the best to that price.
Yeah.
At the absolute best.
Yep. Maybe more. I totally
And
agree.
it's like, who's gonna give a 20 something that much money to flip houses? Like,
Yeah,
it's it to your point, it's a completely different time. It's just a complete paradigm shift.
it is. And it makes sort of entrepreneurial entry into real estate more difficult because everything has gotten so expensive. When
Hmm.
I actually started my career in real estate flipping houses. And this was after the great financial crisis when the banks almost,
Oh
destroyed the global economy. So houses
yeah.
were cheap, but even there, like we were buying in South Central Los Angeles, which is typically, a less expensive neighborhood. And we were buying houses for 200,000 and then flipping them for 300.
Hmm.
And today that, entry price is like six or 700.
Yeah.
Things even in the last 15 years since I started, it just continues to get more and more expensive. And so it was
Hmm.
relatively easy for me to talk to people about, hey, I need 50K to do a house flip. But today you need 200K or something like that. And so it's
Yeah, yeah,
up the
yeah.
ante or even just like a basic entrepreneurial venture in real estate.
Yeah. So what's the path to a solution? I wouldn't even ask you for like the solution here. Like how do we even get on the right track? Because I feel like we're not even there.
We're not there. Yeah, I think it would require, in my view, like a forceful intervention, probably from the state, but maybe even involving the federals to basically dismantle the legal architecture that allows NIMBYs to block developments in local politics.
Hmm.
And the reason this hasn't happened so far is that no like sitting politician wants to do that, even if they're like a super popular governor, for example, because they risk sort of pissing off these big donor bases in neighborhoods that they rely on for their campaign funding and whatnot. But really, what needs to happen is the government needs to come in and say, you can't block these developments. Here are the rules of the road, provide a very clear roadmap so there's no sort of spot intervention by local city councils to say, block a project for this reason or delay a project for that reason. You kind of have to usurp the power structures of local government. But
Hmm.
it's tricky. It's easier said than done. There's a reason it hasn't been done yet.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they are also getting older.
Yeah. Yeah, but so yeah, that's an interesting point because what's about to happen across the country is that the NIMBY boomers, because most of the NIMBYs are boomers, right? They
Hmm.
are going to, pass away and their properties are going to go move on in many cases to their heirs. And what I've noticed just being this may be cynical, but the sort of anecdotal data I have suggests that almost everyone who becomes a homeowner becomes a NIMBY. All of a sudden,
Oh,
like they may
yeah.
be pro housing, when they're living in their apartment in Hollywood, they're pro housing. But when they buy in a single family neighborhood in Hancock Park and somebody proposes a high rise on Olympic, they're the first people at the door, like, I don't want an affordable housing that's in my neighborhood. Yeah, I don't know how we undo
Yeah,
that. That's
yeah.
another podcast.
Yeah, that's I think that's an interesting phenomenon that happens across sort of issues, like Elon Musk being anti-immigration. You're like, bro, where are you
Yeah.
from?
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that's true. Yeah, I think again, it's like depends on where you sit in society, how you feel about things.
Hmm.
And so yeah, if
Yeah.
you're already a homeowner, you're already fantastically wealthy, like you have a different point of view about the journey to get there and
Hmm.
the road, the legal rules of
Yeah.
the road as yeah, to do it. Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, two questions for you that I enjoy asking any sort of real estate focused guest. So it seems that post-COVID offices are at what, 50% capacity, like on a good day, and that's probably even overestimating it.
Yep.
And uh, you know, residential real estate at an all-time low for availability. Shouldn't those two problems like at least partially fix each other?
Yes and no. I think I'm a big believer in the value proposition for converting offices to multi, and I have some friends here locally who've been sort of leading the charge on that. And it is a great strategy. It's difficult to convert these older buildings to residential, especially in the context of these crazy city councils that we just talked about. Like
Yeah.
they don't make it easy. You got all these parking requirements and egress requirements, and so it's not actually financially easy to do it, but it certainly makes sense. Like the use case certainly makes sense. Um, the contrarian take, which I'm starting to get more interested in personally. I don't know if I'll ever invest in this at scale, but part of me thinks actually just buying offices and with the plan to keep them as office is a decent play right now
Hmm.
because everything that I see and hear from my colleagues and other businesses is that the work from home stuff is here to stay, but it's not going to be the dominant model because it doesn't quite work the way everyone hoped it might work, during the COVID era 4 or 5 years ago. So
Hmm.
buying offices, like man, in this town, you can buy offices for like $150 a square foot or something like that. And in a peak era, they were trading for over 500. And so it represents an interesting financial trade. It might take a
Hmm.
while to get there, but I have a feeling that offices will be back and there'll
Hmm.
be another run because it's still a modality for work that I think is here to stay.
Yeah. No, I my gut tells me you are right. That seems like a smart play right now. So let's talk. We got the Olympics coming up. We got the World Cup. I think the Super Bowl, all before 2028. They're building train lines like crazy. You know, if there is a decent public transit system in Los Angeles, how does that impact real estate availability, quality? If we don't need as many parking garages, if people can live without cars, what's like an interesting, exciting possibility that we could be looking at in 3 short years?
Yeah, there is a lot of cool things on the horizon for Los Angeles, and I think with the fires and the homelessness crisis, I think the city is sort of galvanized to try to rise to meet the moment of these things because they're going to be on the national stage, right? And
Hmm.
in a big way, especially for the Olympics. And I hope that produces some good results in the town. And as far as the city of LA and cars, I do think that's basically like the $1 trillion question, right? Like decade ago, LA voted several measures. I think one of them was called like Measure M, and it's a huge investment. It's like 50 billion to do this massive uh, public transit upgrade.
Hmm.
Part of me thinks that there's a chance that that's going to go down as like the biggest waste of money of all time
Mm.
because two things. One, this is just a car town and it's designed a car town. The blocks are huge. Even if you get off at a subway station, like walking along a huge block, it's just not really set up for pedestrian type transit.
Hmm.
And do like professionals in their nice like businesses hire really want to jump on a Lime scooter and like drive around? Like, I don't know. I think it's unlikely. Um, and then the other reason is I think that maybe the rise of the technology is going to make the public transit like irrelevant, right? Like if there really are autonomous vehicles rolling around
Mhm.
town and it's easy and cheap to get in them, and you just won't need a car. Like we'll achieve sort of the same end result that you described, which is people will be less likely to be car owners, and maybe we can repurpose some of the real estate that's tied up with cars into other uses which are necessary, like housing, for example.
Mhm.
I don't know if people are going to ride trains in this town. That's like the ridership numbers are pretty pathetic. Like I
Yeah.
honestly know, I know one or two people in my entire social network that regularly use public transit.
Hmm. Yeah.
Out of,
Well,
yeah, out of
I mean,
thousands. Yeah.
when I was in LA, it was also like scary to ride it, so that doesn't surprise
Yeah.
me. It was, I don't think it was safe. I mean, I was
Yeah.
there peak COVID, so.
Yeah. This it's not safe, it's not comfortable.
Hmm.
There's a lot of encounters with people who are on drugs or whatever that make people uncomfortable. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's not being it doesn't look good at this moment. I could be wrong. We'll see how it goes
Yeah.
in place, but I have to see.
Um, well, I currently live in Barcelona, a city very similar to Los Angeles from a weather and kind of geography perspective. It's on the water, it's close to mountains. It has a very arid, kind of dry climate. Um, and obviously it's much more centrally located than Los Angeles, or centrally designed than Los
Yep.
Angeles. Los Angeles is kind of, in my mind, like endless sprawl. Um, but that being said, like we walk everywhere, we take the train, cabs are quick and easy and cheap, and then there's a bike share, and all the bikes are electric. So you freaking fly. You go
Yeah.
uphill, downhill, flat ground, doesn't matter. And there's a ton of them, and they're everywhere. And that has become my primary means of transport. Like I barely take the train anymore.
Yep.
I'll just take this, bike share with electric bike that even on a hot day, you're barely pedaling, so you're not getting sweaty.
Like getting all, yeah, sweaty in your nice business clothes or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, maybe, for specific neighborhoods, they could have. And I know LA does have a bike share. I've never used it. I don't know anyone that has. Maybe on the beach it works better, but that's an option as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
which I think could
yep.
work, but there's just very few parts of town. Like the roads are unsafe for that
Yeah,
in
yeah.
LA, right? People are flying. Like
I
we have
know.
I forget the numbers, but we have like the one of the highest sort of pedestrian casualty rates from cars and of any major city.
Oh
It's
yeah.
it's not really set up for bikes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, and that's a really good point because Barcelona literally they built it for bikes and then they're like, "Oh, I guess we could add a lane for a car." It's
Yeah, it
like,
was like the opposite. Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yep.
Um, awesome, awesome. Okay, no, enough about the future. So let's talk about, your kind of real estate investment focuses. Like what sorts of real estate investments do you look for, and how do you find like a good deal?
Yeah. The answer is that it's changed a lot over time. The real estate market is a very cyclical market, and it's always sort of evolving. Capital flows quickly to it because it's sort of like ground zero for entrepreneurial investment in America. And so I've done everything from flipping houses to buying large apartment complexes, 200 or 300 unit apartment complexes and fixing those and flipping them or keeping them, to developing like ultra luxury apartment buildings in West Hollywood or condos in West Hollywood, to like building spec homes in Hollywood Hills. So I've been
Oh
investing
wow.
very opportunistically for 15, 16 years and following sort of, what looked interesting to me as an investment, but also kind of what made sense for my life. And so right now, I feel like there's sort of two things on my mind. One, it's been incredibly difficult to make sense of any investment for several years now because interest rates are high. There's two phenomenon happening. Interest rates are too high, so it's hard to pencil the acquisition or development of a new project just because it's like a really risky situation. And two, in many areas of real estate, the market's kind of broken. Like you mentioned office earlier, that's a good example. Like office is a fundamentally broken market because no one's leased, like very few leases, very low occupancy. But multifamily has been challenged as well because a combination of factors like the unemployment in California is more like 5, 6%, much higher than the national average. So people are struggling economically, and the cities around the state keep passing more and more onerous rent control stuff. So it makes it harder to pencil deals for multi. And
Mhm.
so you start going through these things, and there's problems in all of them. Housing, for sale housing is a perfect example. Like to me, I'm the most bullish on that sector. I feel like if there's one thing about America that you can sort of take to the bank, it's that people want to own a home. But that market is completely broken because for 15 years we artificially suppressed interest rates. A whole generation of people got loans at low interest rates. And then after the COVID era inflation, we jacked up rates and we got a bunch of, 75% or something of all homeowners are locked in their houses. They have a loan that's so cheap that it's like financial suicide for them to sell their house and get a new house and at a 7% mortgage rate or whatever
Yeah.
they pay.
Yeah.
So there's this sense that if you're in my industry, like even though like the stock market's been raging and the national economic statistics look like we have been growing, GDP's been growing, it's been pretty ugly for several years. So it's been hard to
Mhm.
pencil new deals. But I'm bullish on living space in general. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I'm also bullish on office. I think experiential retail is another interesting place to be invested. I think there's just as someone who has kids in the town, like there's just all kinds of interesting business opportunities that people are experimenting with, which I think some of
Mhm.
them look really interesting. And so I like that. But what we're focused on at Metros Capital is our bread and butter. Like we've always been in multifamily and in housing. And so right now we're finishing developing some multifamily infill, and we occasionally buy houses with the intent maybe to sell them. And if they don't sell, we just keep them as rentals. So those are
Mhm.
the core strategies that we have right now.
Mhm. Awesome. Awesome.
How do you get a good deal? That's like an art. I don't really know. Right now it's actually really difficult because there's very little transactions and everyone is kind of holding on for dear life and not willing to sell. And so
Yeah.
nothing really looks that interesting yet.
Yeah. And is that kind of your main focus and role in the Metris Capital is deal flow, or what's your main
Yeah, like
focus?
not so much actually. I have a small team. I'm sort of the strategic leader, if you will, just kind of
Hmm.
overseeing everything. And one of my partners, his name is Nick Fenmore. We happen to have the same first name. He is in charge of acquisitions. So
Hmm.
that's his role. But I obviously look at everything with him and keep track on the market as well.
Mhm. Awesome. Awesome. And are you accepting new investors? And if so, what's sort of like your ideal investor partner?
Yeah, so we early on in my career, like if you rewind the clock like 15 years, I raised a lot of money from mostly from high net worth individuals.
Hmm.
And then I got lucky and I met somebody who was a real estate entrepreneur himself. And he sort of became my main business partner and has funded, 90% of everything that we've
Oh
done
wow.
since then. Because he was, super successful, high net worth person, real
Hmm.
estate. Occasionally, some of his friends will invest with us. So up until, for the last whatever 10 years, it's basically just been uh, his money and a little bit of mine and some of his friends. But we are At the beginning of the year, we started a lending company called Westward Capital, and
Hmm.
we are in the works of getting that open for investment and basically looking for, accredited investors to invest in any size really, but like probably 50,000 is kind of a minimum. And what Westward is going to do is offer private money loans in the same space that we operate in. So we're basically going to lend to developers like us in Los Angeles who are doing housing investments, either multifamily or single family. And those returns are super attractive. You can we're as an investor, you can make like double digit and be in first position. So you're basically acting as the lender. You have a first trust deed on the property and you're earning double digits, which we think offers like a super compelling return profile, especially where the world is today.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. And so that'll be more accredited investor facing rather than.
I think so to start. Like we've talked about Reg A and trying to do some other stuff to open it up. And we might do that down the road, but at the beginning of that, we just want to originate some good loans and fund them. And the regulatory, I mean, who knows the every day the regulatory system is changing in Washington these days. So maybe it'll be really easy to do Reg A's in a month or two. We'll have to see how that plays out.
But I'm not familiar with that term. What's reggae?
So essentially, there's a couple versions of this, but they're essentially exemptions from the Securities Act filing requirements for small investors.
Mm-hmm.
And it enables, like, if you find any of these businesses that do crowdfunding to non-accredited investors, almost always they're using one of these exemptions, and Reg A is one of them. And so it basically says, if you check these boxes, I forget all the details, but you can raise up to 75 million from non-accredited investors. And here are your reporting requirements for doing so. And you need
Mm-hmm.
to get SEC approval for it, so it takes like a year to get it and that kind of thing. But I'm in favor of those because I feel like the uh, the democratization of these opportunities is a good thing for the market, and the more people can get involved in real estate, the better. They're already able to go and get scammed by crypto people and Robinhood, buying options or whatever people are doing on Robinhood. So
Yeah, yeah,
investing in real estate should be available to people as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. We run a lot of webinars for financial advisors and fund managers and even folks selling franchises. And the hottest topic, most clicks, lowest cost per registration is alternative investments.
Yeah.
That is just such a hot issue, and it seems to attract folks. They're not accredited investors, but they could be. They like have enough wealth to qualify for that.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I think yeah, the westward capital play, that seems like a smart move. The time is right.
I think so. Like I like that. I like that strategy because one, it's really conservative. At the end of the day, you're in the first position as a lender, and so anything that we lend on, if it goes bad, we're going to know what to do with it, and our basis is going to be 70% what their basis was because we're
Mhm.
not going to loan them 100% of the purchase price. So we feel comfortable that we could just fix any problem. Somebody's doing a housing development or a multifamily development and they lose it to us, we'll be able to turn it around and make a profit out of it.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. That's genius. You're becoming a bank with intense real estate investment experience.
Yeah, like that's the idea is like we
Yeah.
have we have this vertically integrated operation now. Like we're
Hmm.
touching sort of all the value points, almost all of them in the real estate. And why not be a lender as well? It just makes
Hmm.
sense for us given everything that we know how to do and everything that we're doing every day.
Yeah. I mean that's really like that's a worst case scenario for a bank. They're like, what the hell are we gonna do with this house? We don't know. Just like I don't know. We'll just sell it on, a cheap uh whatever, eBay.
Yeah, sell it on
And you yeah, we'll
auction.com
just do
today.
a
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Cool. Well, we are coming towards the end of our time. I have one final question for you. It's an
sure.
open-ended question. You can take it in any direction that you want. And the question is, what are you working towards?
Oh, that's interesting. I think that my evolution as an entrepreneur, it kind of started from this idea or this desire for freedom for whatever reason. Like I had one or two corporate jobs and it was really like soul sucking for me. I just
Oh
couldn't,
yeah, same.
yeah, I couldn't get motivated to be on the track and the idea that I had to report to duty and like it's whatever, my psychology was just reacting very negatively towards that setup. And so when I started my entrepreneurial journey, like my goal was freedom. I wanted freedom. I wanted control over my schedule. I wanted control over what I was working on, and then I really wanted financial freedom. I was attracted to trying to get wealthy so that I could have the freedom that comes along with it. And I think what I learned over the journey the last 15 years is that yeah, that was a good place to go. Like there was nothing wrong with that intent, but there was something sort of missing. And what was missing for me was that there needs to be some kind of purpose or mission behind it as well. So to pursue freedom for freedom's sake can only take you so far in life as an individual. There needs to be some kind of contribution that you're making and intentionally making along the way. And that's what led me to start the newsletter in 2020 and do the podcast and really position my business in the way that we talked about here, where we're kind of trying to touch all the different value chains is like, how can the sum total of my activities be a force for good in the world? What can
Mhm.
I do? What can I wake up every day excited to do to contribute to help other people? And not just how do I get freedom? It's more like what can I do today to make a contribution and in the best possible way? And so now that you know change my mentality around that, it's really infused my life with like a new jump started my motivation. And I get up every day excited to write the newsletter, meet new people, and on the podcast, and try to add value in any investment that we make or any service that we provide the market. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm
That's
trying to,
that's awesome.
and I guess the answer to the question, what I'm trying to do is actually with the podcast and the newsletter, I'm trying to get people to do the same thing. And my
Mhm.
goal is like business can absolutely be a force for good. Entrepreneurship can be a force for good. It can bring meaning into your life, but you
Mhm.
have to do it intentionally. You have to go and pursue that. Otherwise, you're just trying to make money and get rich or whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's awesome, man. Well, everything you've shared has clearly displayed you were on your path there. And really appreciate your time coming on the show. It was awesome talking with you. You have a really unique and like nuanced perspective on things, and you're very like you explain things very clearly. I've had a lot of real estate folks on the podcast. They're all awesome, but you said things in ways that like I don't know really like hit. Uh, I just understood. It like painted a picture in my head, and it's like, damn NIMBYs.
Yeah, thank you. Well, look, I really appreciate the kind words, first of all, and secondly, for having me on the show and give me a chance to share my story with your audience. And yeah, thanks for having me, man. I really enjoyed it
Yeah,
this
yeah,
morning.
yeah. My pleasure, and good luck. Helping with the cleanup in Los Angeles. Lord knows they need it. And where can my audience find out more about you and everything you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a website, nickhalaris.com, and you can find my newsletter there. You can subscribe for free. Publishes once or twice a week, depending on whether we do a podcast. And if you're interested in the real estate, you can check out metroscapital.com.
All right. Awesome. We will link all those in the show notes.
Cool.
All right, Nick, thanks again, man. This was freaking awesome.
Thanks,
And
Chris. Appreciate it.
yeah, my pleasure. And to all our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in and keep on growing out there, everybody.